The latest salvo in the Adani saga has been fired with a response by the business group to an article published in the London-based Financial Times on the 22nd of March. Now, while the statement from the Adani group responds largely to the article, it has also been made public as a response to the political fight brewing over the financing of the Adani group following a report by US-based short seller Hindenburg in January this year. The latest article from Financial Times has been described by the Adani group as a fresh attempt in a competitive race to tear down the Adani group. So here's what's happened. The Adani group has refuted the March 22nd report by the Financial Times and has written a letter to the editor demanding the story be taken down. It's also termed the allegations made in that article as a competitive race to tear down the conglomerate. They've said that the allegations are inaccurate, a deliberate attempt to paint the Adani group in the worst possible light, and have accused the Financial Times of being selective in using facts and lazy in their approach. They've also said that the story is driving misunderstanding and becoming a political issue. Now, the Financial Times report raised issues over source of foreign direct investment into Adani companies, and it claimed that nearly 50% of the FDI was from related offshore companies. So the report, essentially titled Indian Data Reveals Adani Empire's Reliance on Offshore Funding, goes on to say that offshore investments in Adani Group accounted for 45.4% of the total FDI that offshore companies invested in the group. So essentially, of all of the money invested in the Adani Group as foreign direct investment between 2017 and 2022, this article claims that at least half of it, that is $2.6 billion, came from offshore entities into the group. And these offshore entities were opaque overseas entities with connections to the group itself. The FDI inflows, according to the article, took place through a series of small and frequent investments, and the funds were of unclear provenance. That's the term that the article has used. This helped Adani build his sprawling group. They go on to say it's impossible to ascertain whether the funds have been round-tripped. Now, this is the crux of a very, very serious allegation that the Adani Group has refuted once again. Meanwhile, the fight has also turned political with a number of twists and turns. And let's focus on that for a second. While Rahul Gandhi has been questioning the 20,000 crore rupees investment in Adani companies, presumably based on this Financial Times article, ex-Congress leader Ghulam Nabi Azad has just yesterday raised questions over Rahul's own connections with businessmen. In the middle of all of this, NCP leader Sharad Pawar's statement in an interview that a JPC on Adani issue is not required and Hindenburg's report seems targeted has set the cat among the pigeons and raised questions about the opposition unity index as far as Adani issue is concerned. Let's first listen in to some of those reactions coming in.
Why do you always say what BJP is saying? Every time you say what BJP is saying. There's a very simple thing. ये जो 20,000 करोड़ रुपए अदानी जी की शेल कंपनीज में हैं, ये किसके हैं? ये बेनामी हैं, किसके हैं?
मैंने कोई अलग कोई खास बात की ऐसी नहीं है. मेरा इतना ही कहना है कि जेपीसी की दीवार हमारे सब अपोजिशन के साथियों ने की, ये बात सच है. हमारे पार्टी के भी प्रतिनिधि उस मीटिंग के थे, ये भी बात सच है. मगर हमें ऐसे लगता है कि जेपीसी का जो कॉम्पोजिशन होगा, ये कॉम्पोजिशन में समझो 21 सदस्यों की जेपीसी हो तो इसमें 15 लोग रूलिंग पार्टी के रहेंगे और 5 या 6 लोग अपोजिशन के रहेंगे.
I saw a tweet from Mr. Rahul Gandhi mentioning your name and associating with Adani and all. So how do you feel after seeing that tweet?
It is shame. Rahul Gandhi saying, I have never any association with any businessman, whereas their entire family had all along the association with businessmen, including him. I still want, because I have a great respect, I have a great respect for the family. I don't want to speak anything. Otherwise, I can give 10 examples where he would go and meet, even outside the country, to meet even people who are undesirable businessmen.
इससे एक बड़ा सवाल उठता है कि राहुल गांधी हर 4-5 महीने के बाद विदेश जाते हैं। किससे मिलते हैं राहुल गांधी? ये अनडिजायरेबल बिजनेसमैन कौन है? ये देश जरूर जानना चाहेगा और हम चाहेंगे कि ये बात सच्चाई देश के सामने आनी चाहिए कि राहुल गांधी जी जब भी विदेश जाते हैं तो किस तरह के अनडिजायरेबल एलिमेंट से, बिजनेसमैन से, अवांछनीय बिजनेसमैन से वो मिलते हैं। और जब भी राहुल गांधी उनसे मिलकर आते हैं तो भारत के खिलाफ, मोदी जी के खिलाफ, भारत की विकास यात्रा के खिलाफ उनकी जबान और तल्ख हो जाती है। He becomes more aggressive.
All right, so a slew of accusations and counter accusations now making that political pitch murkier as well. But let's talk a bit about whether this latest explanation or response by the Adani group is actually quelling some of those concerns. R.S Pathania of the BJP is joining me on the show. I'm speaking with Kailash Adhikari, he's the MD of governance now. Arshpreet Khadial of the Congress party is with me, and I'm also speaking with Sanjay Jha, author. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. Arshpreet Khadial, let me begin, with your response, because what the Adani group has put out today in its last para, actually, of its note, also talks about the fact that they've made this public in response to the political accusations emerging out of this story. Has the two factors of Ghulam Nabi Azad saying Rahul Gandhi meets certain kinds of businessmen and Sharad Pawar saying that he doesn't really think a JPC would help, has it sort of diffused your attack on the Adani group?
Not at all. In fact, I can show you numerous videos of Mr. Azad, appreciating and vouching for Mr. Gandhi when he was going to become the president of the Congress party. And number two, as far as, any politician or anyone in any political party is concerned, what matters is 130 crore people who are willing to know, who want to know as to where did the money come from in the shell companies, and why is the Bharatiya Janata Party not wanting to order a probe? I mean, why does the Bharatiya Janata Party not want to order a probe? If he'd be innocent, he'd be found innocent. If he'd be guilty, he'd be found guilty. Why not order a probe?
But there is a Supreme Court probe. Arshpreet, there's already a Supreme Court probe on.
See, that's exactly where a lot of people are making a fault, because that has a limited scope. It does not look into the criminal liabilities. It has a very, very limited scope. We want a JPC probe so that everything can be looked into and the accountability can be fixed. And if, the Bharatiya Janata, I mean, why does the Bharatiya Janata Party have a problem with it? Why does the Bharatiya Janata Party have to rebut it? And number three, when it comes to corruption, they say we have zero tolerance for corruption. If that's so, why have you inducted a Narayan Rane, a Suvendu Adhikari, a Himanta Biswa Sharma, Mukul Roy, a Captain Amrinder Singh, and many more? Then they say because these people had corruption cases pending against them while they were in the other parties. And number two, they say we really have a big problem with dynasts, and then they induct a Jyotiraditya Scindia, a Captain Amrinder Singh, a Kiran Rijiju ji, a Piyush Goyal ji, and many more leaders.
No, but you're going all over the place, Arshpreet. You're going all over the place. Now you're talking about...
I'm giving an example. Yeah. I'm giving an example of the double standards of the Bharatiya Janata Party. They say something, preach something, practice entirely different. Number two, I asked from the Bharatiya Janata Party, they say Mr. Gandhi's, attack and all that, he speaks from foreign soil. What about the statement given by the Bharatiya Janata Party's leader in 2006, if I'm not wrong, on foreign soil, where he said that, before 2014, people used to feel ashamed for being born in India. Another statement given on foreign soil by a BJP leader.
No, but Arshpreet, what does that have to do with today's topic? I'm asking you if your Adani attack has gotten diffused.
Not at all.
The opposition, the rest of the opposition is not standing by you on this. Sharad Pawar seems to have stepped back.
Now coming to that, around 17 parties are asking questions over the Adani issue.
Okay.
And they have written it, they have said it, they have taken action against it.
Okay.
Everybody's together on this, and not just 17 opposition parties. The country is together on this, and they're asking the Bharatiya Janata Party this one question: why be afraid? Because when we speak in the parliament, our mics get muted, our statements get expunged, the session gets adjourned, we are not given equal opportunities. If we speak outside on the road, we get cases registered against us. There are FIRs, and then the process becomes punishment.
Okay, Mr. Pathania, you need to respond to some of the questions that Arshpreet has also put up. Why is the BJP taking up cudgels for the Adani group right now? You seem to be taking up their cause. They are
not at all.
They're well capable of defending themselves. They've sent a detailed response to the Financial Times. They are explaining what their position is legally in business terms. How has the BJP gotten embroiled into this?
Absolutely not, Tamanna. With due respect, I want to contradict the very punchline you started your argument. We are just defending reason. We are trying to defend rationale. We are trying to put up a case of political propriety. I'm very irked by the turn of events, the sequence of events as have happened on the political horizon of India. There was an adage in Europe that church is always right. And with a heavy heart, I want to say that grand old party is also obsessed with the maxim that the king is always right, their prince is always right. But there are some fundamental questions which they need to answer. This Adani balloon has ultimately deflated, not only because of this statement of NCP, but because of the events which have happened on the spot. Adani, if a very brief narrative of the investments which have occurred in Adani Green Energy, Adani Global Investment Strategy Company Limited, an investment of about 2.9 billion in March 2023. So their shares have already gone an upward swing. The story which was concocted and which was put forward by a self-styled analyst whose credibility is already under doubt in US also, it has deflated like a balloon. So Congress needs to principally answer. Congress needs to principally answer that why did it cripple the working of the parliament when? Don't they know that Rule 352 of Rules of Procedure of Conduct of Business in the Lok Sabha, no issue which is sub judice in a court, and then even Supreme Court that stands on a higher pedestal, it cannot be discussed on the floor of the parliament. Don't they know this? Rule 352. Don't they know about that the Lok Sabha MP P. Karunakaran was stopped from raising the issue of sale of beach resorts because it was pending adjudication in a particular court? And it is not the Bharatiya Janata Party brought the matter to the court. It was a Congress member parliament who filed a petition in the Supreme Court and matter is sub judice. Why they are just shenanigans? They are just political.
Mr. Pathania, but my question remains. They are doing shenanigans in Parliament. They are stalling Parliament. Even the Treasury didn't do much to allow this Parliament session to function. Let's be honest. No one wanted Parliament to function this time
I refute it.
The question is that Adani is fighting its own battles. Why has the BJP gotten involved in seeming like, I'm talking about the perception and what the opposition is charging, that you are batting for a business group?
But Tamanna, let me issue a very statement, very clear, very categorical, and very responsibly. The SEBI is seized of the matter. The register of companies is seized of the matter. The Honorable Supreme Court is already seized of the matter, and Bharatiya Janata Party is on record to abide by whatever the verdict of the SEBI, this ROC, and the Honorable Supreme Court also. But we at least want to expose this is cheap political opportunity, this is cheap political picnicking. This is absolutely a regional rationale being defied. This is absolutely a country and a Lok Sabha being held hostage on the very maxim that the prince is always right. So this is very unfortunate for the democracy. You see, right to information is the basic percent of a democracy, but right against misinformation and right against misinformation. That's what I want to say.
No, so now the thing is, is it the quote-unquote prince is always right? In this case, Sanjay Jha, it's become more than the quote-unquote prince.
Yes.
Because you have, now I'm coming to Sanjay Jha, you have the Financial Times writing an article which they're refuting. They're refuting reports by various media organizations, and of course, Hindenburg is the start of all of this. So we have to see what action they're taking against Hindenburg. But politically, is this story going anywhere? You know, it's kind of reminding us of the whole Rafale expedition politically before the last general elections, which frankly crash landed in terms of political resonance with the people of this country. When a Sharad Pawar also steps back from supporting an issue, one must reconsider whether this is going to be an election plank.
Tamanna, first and foremost, I think comparing Rafale and Adani scam, which I think is one of the biggest mammoth frauds since 1947, is like comparing apples and oranges. My voice is echoing, you can just look into it.
Okay.
The simple point is that the BJP spokesperson right now was talking about, Hindenburg being a short seller. But the truth is that short selling is a legal financial practice, Mr. BJP spokesperson. And the world's biggest investors seem to believe Hindenburg much more than your government, which has now become the lawyer and the PR firm for Mr. Gautam Adani. I mean, you can't have a $150 billion wipe-off in market cap because Rahul Gandhi criticized it in parliament or because Hindenburg wrote a report. Are you mocking JP Morgan Chase? Are you making fun of Standard Chartered? Are you trying to say that Citibank is some frivolous bank? Are you trying to actually make a joke out of Dow Jones? I mean, what are you talking about here, for heaven's sake? I mean, the truth is this, Tamanna, that even I read the Financial Times rebuttal given by the Adani Group, but that is not the end of the story. I mean, have you read the Forbes articles, which talked about how, shares of the Adani Group have been pledged by entities abroad and loans have been taken which have not been disclosed to the stock exchanges. And incidentally, the biggest story, in my opinion, is if truly Hindenburg is a fraudulent firm, a canard being spread by the BJP and Mr. Adani, why don't they go and sue them in New York? Because as Hindenburg has clearly said, you sue me in New York, I will ask for all the data and the entire scam will probably explode beyond Mount Everest. So I think the bigger point, Tamanna, is this, that even when Mr. Sharad Pawar is concerned, he's a political veteran. He's got his own voice. He's given an interview to an Adani-owned channel. I will not add too much of currency to that conversation because, let's be honest, he's spoken something 2 months later which contradicts what the opposition has been asking for.
No, okay.
In any case, he has not said that I object to a JPC being formed by the other opposition parties. So, one out of 18...
And also the clarification or addition that he's made in the last 24 or 48 hours has been that he is not for a JPC because it will be dominated by the BJP, so hence no use. So that's also an important sort of angle that he is given.
Tamanna, I'll tell you why that is actually incorrect. If the opposition today is asking for a JPC, fully aware, and they're fully aware, by the way, that the numbers will be stacked in favor of the BJP, you know why is that?
Just 30 seconds.
Because the conversations will be recorded in parliament. It will eventually force Mr. Adani to answer questions by seasoned kind of people within the opposition who understand how financial transactions work, and the Indian media will report it. It will become more, shall we say, transparent and open.
Okay.
The Supreme Court committee, by the way, let me repeat it again and again.
To be fair, that's Mr. Pawar's own view. Yes, Mr. Pathania, since you have requested a response.
Just 30 seconds.
Yes.
The double speak and duplicity of the Congress stands exposed that almost 1 lakh crores of investment by Adani group of companies is in Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan. If it's a fraud firm, if it is involved in so much and heinous of that financial crime, why doesn't the Congress in the first go scrap all of it investment in Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan? Number two, let me inform you, sir. The report of a JPC that stands on a lower pedestal as compared to the report of SEBI and ROC, and particularly the Supreme Court Article 141 that is absolutely binding on the country, binding on executive, judiciary, and the legislature also. So judiciary, SEBI, and ROC, they stand on a higher political platform. But you need to negate and nullify, because you know that the Supreme Court took the hard ball on Pegasus, Supreme Court took the hard ball on Ayodhya, Supreme Court took the hard ball on Justice Lodha, Supreme Court took the hardball and Godra right. You just want to prolong. You just want to play petty politics. You don't want to come to the facts. You don't want to accept. You don't want to call a spade, sir. This is my respectful submission. Why don't you dispute the credibility of the Supreme Court?
Arshpreet, one minute. Arshpreet, on the specific point. Arshpreet, on the specific point कि राजस्थान छत्तीसगढ़ में जो investments हैं Adani Group के, why don't you refute it and say कि हमको नहीं चाहिए? Since your leader has cast very serious aspersions on this particular business group, have no truck with them then in states ruled by the Congress.
Thank you. Kindly allow me a minute uninterrupted. First and foremost, that's why we are asking for a probe. Let a probe happen. If he's found guilty, we'll check off all the contracts. We'll do away with all of it. But for that, you need to get a probe done. Number two, with limited terms of reference, the nexus that exists cannot be exposed. That's why JPC is imperative. Number three, Mr. Gandhi was disqualified for a reason in haste. His sentence was suspended by the magistrate, then by the Honorable District Court until the disposal of the appeal. And they, in a haste, they just disqualified him because he was questioning over the Adani issue. He was demanding a JPC probe, and the Bharatiya Janata Party wanted to convey a message. If you say this, if you speak over it, you're going to be disqualified, or there's going to be a case registered against you. That is what the BJP does. Number three, he happened to be the second richest person in the world, and despite that, he was not even in the 10 top taxpayers in India. How is that possible? Number two, the BJP spokesperson has still not answered the question. Why do you have to defend him? Why do you have to rebut it? Why are you not in favor of having a probe?
Defending him, sir.
Do you not want to?
Okay, 1 minute. I'm going to come to Kailash Adhikari. And I want to come to the crux of the rebuttal from the Adani Group. Let's come to what the core issues is, because the politics sometimes obfuscates what the core issue is and what the charge is. The charge against the Adani Group today that Hindenburg has made, and the Financial Times article seems to try and enhance or, corroborate through their reading of publicly available information, is that the source of investments into this company between 2017 and 2022 from overseas entities seems to be possibly a case of round tripping. Essentially, money going from India through these companies coming back into the Adani Group, which has inflated its stock prices. That's the crux of the Hindenburg allegation, and the Financial Times seems to want to reiterate it in a sense. Do you think that the response that has come from the Adani Group is enough to quell such concerns? Is the response strong enough?
Firstly, thank you, Tamanna, for letting me in 25 minutes into a debate of just 28 or 29 minutes. Nevertheless, for any listed company, and Adani is no different than that, for any listed company, if any major announcement is to be made, and getting an investment or raising capital into a listed company as per the laws of the land, as per the SEBI LODR regulation 30, requires substantial amount of disclosures. And it also requires a certain amount of shareholder approval and the board approval. So whenever a listed company, and Adani Group is supposed to have about more than 7-8 listed companies, if a particular entity, be it a promoter entity or be it a non-promoter entity, is investing money into the company, and that too from overseas, great amount of disclosures and into detail, which runs into pages, have to be first given in front of the board, secondly in front of the shareholders, thirdly in front of the stock exchanges. Only when the stock exchanges are, they believe into the fact that this is okay, do they give their final approval for that. So Adani Group rebutting the charges made by the Hindenburg report or the Financial Times is natural for them to make that, because they know that the entire disclosures that they have to do as a listed companies have gone and due approvals have been sought by them. That is the first. Secondly, the entire opposition is making a political issue, which is not a political issue, to be very honest. If you feel, and if the entire, the Mahekma feels that there is some kind of wrongdoing, then the Honorable Supreme Court has already taken cognizance of that fact. And in front of the panel which is set by the Honorable Supreme Court, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, along with its the top brass of the SEBI, has already given their first presentation. and upon more findings, they will give their more presentation.
No, but the concern is the terms of reference. Kailash Adhikari, the concern is the terms of reference. And might I add, coming in on the 25th minute is not necessarily a bad thing. You've heard everyone else and you can add that, very insightful comment that I would hope from you. Yes, the Adani group will, of course, defend itself. My question to you specifically, and that's why I'll come back to you for a follow-up, is that do you think that response is cutting ice? What is the crux of their response? Very simply put, because this is also a business story, it's a political story. They are saying कि आप जो भी कुछ बता रहे हो, it's all in the public domain. You've not found some hidden treasure trove and found this information as the Financial Times. You've gleaned what's in the public domain, but you have chosen to be selective. Yet, do you think an explanation is required as to why there are so many opaque transactions and so many related party transactions? Do you think that explanation needs to go to someone?
That explanation already goes. That is what I'm trying to say, Tamanna. If a listed company enters into a related party transaction, there are a lot of barriers that they need to cross. Before that, the approvals do not come, and a listed company cannot enter into a related party transaction only. So what response that the Adani group has given is but natural, and anyone else on their behalf would, if any other company would have been there in their place, they would have also given. It is nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Because while taking those transactions or while undergoing those transactions, all those due disclosures have been made and due approvals have been sought. Otherwise, वो कर ही नहीं पाते.
Okay.
एक related party transaction करना एक listed company के लिए कोई मजाक है ही नहीं
Sanjay Jha, I know you want to respond to Kailash Adhikari, but I want to give you a question just before you respond. Now, the thing with, and you know this well, business operations in India is that with every regime, they are open to scrutiny and open to charges of corruption. We've seen that in the UPA days, everything from telecom licenses to coal block licenses were all smeared, tarred and charged with corruption. The charge that governments are siding with one company versus another depending on whatever reasons has always been there. It just depends on what the regime is, who's making the charge and which is the company in question. Do you think that there needs to be another way? Because with every such wave of charges, and I'm not saying Adani is right, Adani is wrong, with every such wave of charges, it becomes more difficult to do business in India. Indian businesses and their operations lose credibility. Any government contract or okay to any business becomes suspect and question mark. Don't you think that that's a very real concern?
Tamanna, what we have in India is a classic case of crony capitalism and corruption. And India is now looking like a banana republic, a plutocracy. I'll tell you where I disagree with the previous panelist. Governance is not that you raid companies and then your blue-eyed boys come and buy them out. Let us, Tamanna, not ignore the elephant in the room. Let's take just one example. I can cite many. And I'm sure everybody on the panel is aware, despite the fact that they might be trying to be very brave about it. We know how Mumbai airport was terrorized into a sale. And that is exactly what needs to be investigated. Because you can't have a situation where an owner suddenly hands over the airport and overnight the cases are not investigated anymore. An anonymous letter arises about a certain malfeasance. And a sale happens. I mean, are we a mafia country or what? I mean, I don't want to absolutely accept this green chit being given to the entire transaction by people here who are apparently having the authority.
But Sanjay, is there a clean chit? I'm asking, is there a clean chit right now with an ongoing probe?
Well, Tamanna, let me tell you, I have read the entire Supreme Court reference. Who is going to investigate into the forensic details of each and every transaction? Somebody has to do a money trail. Somebody has to go from the investigating agencies abroad to find out what has happened in Mauritius. Where are those addresses? Who is the owner? Why is a Singapore entity raised $240 million from a Russian bank? Have all the shares been pledged? Have they been reported to the exchange? If there is share price manipulation, you need to look at a trail of activities beyond it. And I think the larger point here, it's as clear as daylight that how can you have a man who overnight has acquired businesses across sectors in India with the government tweaking tender terms, making it easy for somebody to acquire.
Is it overnight? It's not that before 2014, the Adani group had nothing.
That's it.
$4.5 billion. And then it became $150 billion in 2022.
Okay, I want the BJP spokesperson to respond to two things. Terms of reference of what the Supreme Court has laid down is not enough. It does not investigate specifically the role of the government of India in giving Adani Group maybe sweetheart terms and deals which have helped them. And is there enough of a forensic audit that will take place?
Tamanna, the naviate and the sense of imagination of Mr. Sanjay Jha is really inspiring. This needs to be taken note of. They doubt the credibility of the Supreme Court, and your words are, with due respect, they are contemptuous also. I stick to my stand that Article 141, all executive, judicial and legislative authorities, they have to act in furtherance of and in the aid of the Honorable Supreme Court. Supreme Court is it stands on a bigger pedestal as compared to a JPC. JPC report is simply a sort of recommendation to a government. And even the SEBI or ROC recommendation, they stand on a higher pedestal as compared to that of a JPC. So I don't want to undermine, because you just, sir, I am saying JPC cannot be done. Rule 352 of Rules of Procedure of Lok Sabha, no subjudicial matter. No subjudice matter. No subjudice matter can be discussed on the floor of the parliament. Please don't play petty politics, sir. And this is an amusing sequence of events. First of all, the BBC story, then George Soros, and now this is another nail in the coffin. What is the nail in the coffin? You are self-damaging.
Mr. Pathania, the George Soros, if you're saying the Adani story is iffy, the George Soros story is also iffy. I mean, it's the fact is that the entire, let's make business and politics and this nexus a huge issue on either side, I think is really not paying attention to the real issues that the voters of this country need to understand. We are on the verge of a possible global recession. What is India's plan? How are we going to protect jobs? How are we going to protect our business? Today there is a report, I don't know if anybody cares, that we might have a less than usual rainfall. We might be deficient in rainfall this year. What does that mean for our farmers, crops, rural consumption? Does anybody care? I think we need to start asking these questions as well. I'm going to sign off at this point from this particular debate. I want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm taking a very short break, but don't miss the story coming up on the other side. It's a big headline this evening and a shocker indeed. Ahead of the 2024 polls, TMC and NCP and the CPI have been de-recognized as national parties. They lose that status ahead of the polls. What does that mean? I'm going to be joined by former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi on this after a very short break. Stay tuned.